It's 2022 in Tangshan, China, and life is great. Your city is flourishing, and there's a Tangshan spirit to be felt throughout. But wait, how did we get here? First, we have to rewind over 40 years to 1976. It is now July 28th, 1976, and Tangshan has received a warning that there is a large earthquake with a possible magnitude of 8 on the Richter scale. The city has little regulation in place, so most towns do not take this seriously. Although this happened over 40 years ago, there is still extensive research being done. However, the overall agreed upon idea is that there was a convergent boundary of two major tectonic plates. Tectonic forces generated by the Amurian tectonic plate dove under the Eurasian tectonic plate, which caused the crust to be destroyed. This shift caused a huge earthquake along the 25-mile Tangshan Fault, which caused a 75-mile rupture under the surface of the ground running north-northeast and south-southwest of the city. When this earthquake hit, it affected almost every aspect of the city. The death toll was one of the highest ever being reported as 242,000 people, but it may have been as high as 655,000. Plus, at least 700,000 more people were injured. The physical effects were also extremely devastating. Extensive property damage, even reaching Beijing, about 70 miles away, was apparent. In fact, most of the fatalities resulted from the collapse of unreinforced masonry homes where people were sleeping, since the main shock happened at 3:42 a.m. The magnitude of this earthquake is very hard to imagine, as the shaking was felt more than 680 miles away in all directions, and a major aftershock was felt about 40 miles northeast in Luoxian. This aftershock also had a major impact in the delayed efforts to save people from the rubble. The environmental impact was also extreme in its quantity and quality. The shaking, which lasted 14 to 16 seconds, transformed much of the region's exceptionally deep sandy soil into a fluid-like mass resulting from a process called liquefaction. Few buildings were anchored to bedrock, so the shaking and subsequent liquefaction from the soil destabilized and brought down most of the structures throughout the area. The earthquake either destroyed or severely damaged more than 85% of unreinforced houses, multi-story buildings, and other structures in Tangshan. Infrastructure and agriculture were also affected. Liquefaction, combined with the sudden emergence of surface faults, wrecked railroads, rail lines, bridges, dams, wells, and other infrastructure. Sand blows, which are caused by the increased weight of layers of soil on layers of lower waterlogged and sand, resulted in silted wells and irrigation ditches. South of Tingshan, where liquefaction was the highest, the tremendous outpouring of sand caused significant damage to crops. Strong after tremors continued for days that leveled almost every building and flooded the mines. There were several more earthquakes in this area in the late 1970s. Because of this and the damage that was done with the 1976 earthquake, the infrastructure was rebuilt to be highly earthquake resistant. Huge new apartment complexes housed 80,000 families by the end of 1980s, and factories were rebuilt to minimize air pollution. The land along the fault line was made into parks rather than infrastructure, and a memorial was put up in the city. Although many industries resumed operation within a year or two, it was not until the late 1980s that the total production regained its pre-1976 levels, which is still impressive due to the immense amount of damage and destruction that occurred. Additionally, less than a month after the earthquake, water and power supplies and transport and telecommunications links were all restored in the disaster-stricken areas. Which brings us now back to modern-day Tangshan. The nationwide fighting spirit that helped the citizens rebuild themselves and their cities can still be felt today. This earthquake undoubtedly caused severe and irreversible human, environmental, and infrastructural damage. However, there are now many more laws and regulations in place. Earthquake warnings are taken more seriously and are therefore more effective.